Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. That is for being codependent. Now in your 20s, you're exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in crap relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hey girl, hey! This is Marissa Esquivel, your mostest of the Codependummy podcast. I'm coming to you live from my parents' house. I have a cleaning lady. I love my cleaning lady. She is at my house. And so I had to decide today between the noise of my cleaning lady or the noise of my parents and my sister and her boyfriend. So just giving you guys a heads up in case you hear them. We love them. Thank them for being here. And we just couldn't avoid it today. Okay, so thank you for your patience. Today's episode number 28, and I'm introducing a new segment this week, the Codependummy playlist. Today is the first song, and this is part 1 of the Codependummy playlist. So what the fuck is the Codependummy playlist? Well, in this new segment, I will first pick a song that I like, that resonates with my codependummy heart. Second, I will take said song and break it down and its quintessential codependentness. And I'm going to connect aspects of my own life to the songs, also some literature about codependency, psychology. And then third, I will try to find ways to help you stop resonating so much with the song, right? Feeling like it's an anthem, by creating ways for it just to be a song that you like, since you aren't a codependummy, but a codependent. That is my intention. In this week's episode, I'm going to analyze Favorite Crime by Olivia Rodrigo. But before that, let's check in. How, oh how, are you feeling, baby girl? How is your week going? We are officially halfway through 2021. How's the year been going for you so far? Are you participating in our 30-day self-validation challenge? In the Codependummy Dilemma that aired on June 21st, listener ND and I, we committed to having an evening call, quote unquote, to reflect on our day and validate ourselves with ourselves. I'm doing it and loving it. Apparently my mom and twin sister are supposed to be doing it. Hope you guys are doing it. And yeah, if you want to join, you can start tonight and listen to the end of that episode for an amazing example. ND really modeled how to do it at the end. Also, I am trying to improve my skills as a podcaster and interviewer. Okay? I know I tend to say right and like and a lot. I'm working on being more intentional about all of them, and foremost, I'm working on asking better questions during the interviews. I have listened back, and some of the questions, I'm like, Marissa, do you speak English? The sentence structure. So I appreciate your patience and support with that. I'm also one thing I've observed is I'm really trying to build the bridge between our discussions about where codependency comes from and what it looks like as young women. Like, okay, I get that shit went down when I was younger, and now I act like this. But like, how did I go through that? Start to interact with the world in a certain way that led me to being a codependummy. Okay, so I'm really committing to building that bridge. And lastly, this is called the Codependummy playlist. I'm also toying with Codependummy anthems, Codependummy theme songs, DJ Codependummy. So if you have a preference for this segment, let me know your votes. Email Marissa at codependummy.com. For now, I will be DJ Codependummy with the Codependummy playlist. All right, so how are we defining codependency for this week's episode? I define it as a way of being where one prioritizes the feelings, wants, and needs of another in an unconscious attempt to fulfill their own feelings, wants, and needs. I also will be pulling from David Malan this week. He's a British psychologist who I'm a big fan of. I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I read his stuff. And he talks about dependence as an intense need in relation to human beings, right? So codependency would be like two people having cooperating and, right, both having an intense need in relation to each other, right? Couple, codependent. And as you will hear in this anecdote I'm using in this week's episode, upcoming episodes, it involves me and an ex-boyfriend, and we were codependent AF. Favorite Crime by Olivia Rodrigo. That is today's song. Codependummy playlist, song number 1. If you haven't heard of her or her new album, Sour, you are welcome, my dear Codependummy. Olivia is an 18-year-old actress, singer, and songwriter whose album was released earlier this year, 2021. And song after song, she sings about heartbreak, breakups, and breakdowns surrounding her romantic relationships. And it is music to a codependent's ear. When I heard the song Favorite Crime, I thought I have to analyze this on the podcast. It reminded me a lot of my first serious and seriously codependent relationship when I was 21. So I'm going to be applying the lyrics to that time in my life. Now, I don't have permission to play the song. I did a little research, and to be safe, I'd rather be safe than sorry. So I'm going to put a link to the song on Spotify in the show notes. You can pause, give it a listen now, give it a listen after the episode. I will sing some of the lyrics, so there's that too. Okay, some context. More context. So the situation and literature we are using today. Situation. Focusing on the 14-month dating relationship I had at 21. Now, if I were to apply this song to the entirety of the relationship, we would be here for hours. Okay, so to spare you and myself from reliving the whole thing, I'm just going to discuss the first third of the relationship. Okay, so the first 4 or 5 months. The entire thing was brutal, reflecting on it, but I'm keeping it simple, discussing the first third of the relationship. I'll do latter parts in other episodes. At 21, I had not been in a serious dating relationship before, but was codependent unknowingly, unconsciously, with friends, professors, family, and boys who didn't like me back until I met my ex. A little more context. I'm going to interweave a psychological phenomena, compulsion to repeat, or repetition compulsion. Okay, this is coined by Freud. And according to him, this happens when a person repeats an event or its circumstances over and over again. Okay, for example, traumatic repetitions could be seen as the result of an attempt to retrospectively master the original trauma. What the fuck does that even mean? I would argue, okay, it was traumatic for me to feel like the uglier, fatter, less athletic, boring, insert negative description, twin sister, right? I felt like I was labeled those things. I really internalized that. When I felt like I was labeled that by family, friends, classmates, teachers, etc. Okay, it didn't happen all the time, but it happened. Now, right, going through this experience, I may then put myself in or picture myself being compared to others and doing whatever I could to master the original trauma by winning, being number one, being chosen, being preferred. Okay, it's not conscious, it's not logical, it's not rational, it doesn't actually make sense. As I discuss the song, you'll see how with my ex, I kept doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? Compulsion to repeat, repetition, compulsion, because you will see how aspects of our relationship were similar to that trauma, right? Of me being compared and finding myself less worthy, less lovable, uglier, fatter, etc. What comes up for you as I describe this phenomena? Compulsion to repeat. Any questions? And final piece of context. Before I get to the last piece of context, with the repetition compulsion, do you find yourself dating the same person over and over and over again? Do you find yourself having conflicts with your coworkers, different ones, over and over and over again? Do you set a goal and succeed for a certain time and then fail over and over and over again? Okay. Potentially, unconsciously underneath that is a compulsion to repeat what is familiar, what is seemingly comfortable, because it's not actually that comfortable, what is in our past. Okay. Unconsciously hoping that maybe this time it will be different. Usually it's not. So we'll get to how to overcome that towards the end. Okay, final context. How did we meet? Well, the summer after my 21st birthday, So 2009, I went out one night in a dark green dress and wore dark green eyeliner. Okay, I look good. Throughout college, I was unconsciously codependent. It was a shit show, but I had been making strides recently thanks to starting therapy in 2008. Apparently, not enough strides because I went out that evening, that summer, with my friends and I blacked out. I vaguely remember stepping out of a house party. I lived in a college town, so there were lots of parties going on all at the same time. And I remember I stepped out and I was on the phone with a male coworker who I liked at the time. And I was trying to convince him, like, no, you come here. And he was somewhere else, like, no, I'm on this street, come to this. And I was like, no. And this group of guys were walking by said house party. And they came and walked up to me, right? Since I was looking all fine in my green dress with my green eyeliner. And they started talking to me. And I think they even got on the call and were telling the guy, like, yeah, dude, you should come here. It's legit. So I proceeded to talk with this group of gentlemen. My ex was one of them, and he noticed my green eyeliner matching my green dress. So we walked back into the party. I was the bouncer, apparently. I continued to drink, and the remainder of the evening gets very fuzzy. But my ex, we will call him ex-boyfriend, and we left the party together. As we were walking back to, I don't know, his place or my place, not really sure where we were headed, but I drunkenly pointed out the home I was supposed to move into that weekend with 10 other girls. Again, it's this college town. It's just students next to students next to students in this like 1.5-mile radius. And I pointed to the house, cliffside house on the beach, and I was like, oh, I'm moving in there this weekend. Yeah, and I think we were like, let's go look. So we walked up to the house. It was locked. And we broke in, had sex on the kitchen counter, and then went back to his place, which happened to be his frat house. Again, vague memories. And he later told me that while we were having sex, there was some resistance on my part. Like I had been pushing him away. And yeah, when he told me that, I sense he was just, in his shame potentially about it and just giving me a slice of it. And I didn't know what to do with it. I have talked through it and I still feel shame about it too. So that happened. That is how we met. So I woke up in his bed the next day, did my walk of shame home. He reached out and we proceeded to date for a rocky and codependent laden 14 months. Again, I'm just going to focus on the first 4 months. We'll talk about the other 10 at a later date. Okay, so let's break the lyrics down of Olivia's song, Favorite Crime, and apply them to the relationship in a semi-timeline. All right, so the first lyric I'm going to break down. Olivia sings, know that I loved you so bad, I let you treat me like that. I was your willing accomplice, honey. In English, know that I loved you so bad, I let you treat me like that. I was your willing accomplice, honey. Okay, so I apparently lusted after him so bad just after meeting him, since I was indeed his willing accomplice in our break-in, right? I had been on a roll the previous year, hadn't had any one-night stands, was doing well with drinking, thanks to therapy, and, oh, excuse me, then I broke into my future home to have sex on the kitchen counter, right? Real mature. Uh, so I was his willing accomplice, right? I wasn't like, no, we can't break in. And that not only impacted me, it impacted 9 of my future roommates who were scheduled to move in that week. And we ended up having to push our move-in date 3 days later because the landlord had to fix the front door because someone had broken in. Right? So I think like some of my roommates knew, some of them didn't. Maybe they all knew, and I hope that some of them had kept it a secret, but I was I just felt awful. I was very apologetic and sorry. I was disappointing my roommates, I disappointed myself, and then he reached out a couple days later and I engaged. Okay, so here here there are signs, Marissa. Here are some signs. I don't think I even recalled his name when I woke up in the morning, and it just so happened that we had the same phone, so when I looked at his phone, I thought it was mine. I called my phone, found it hiding under the mini fridge, grabbed it, and got out of there. Like, just again, I had done really well the previous 6 to 12 months, and then really, like, this was how I behaved in the last 12 hours. Like, fuck. But he had my number, he reached out, and I texted him back. That same weekend, or around that time, I remember he moved an hour away. He had graduated and he came to visit a couple weeks later. And I let him treat me like that, which, like, that was very poorly, right? We went to a house party together, and as we walked in, he like grabbed my thong through the back of my dress and snapped it. Uh, right? I know some of you thinking you're like, Jesus, Marissa, have some self respect. But no, I was a codependummy. I was looking for love. I was unconsciously thinking that if I prioritize ex boyfriend's needs, then maybe mine will be fulfilled too. Right? He snapped my thong. I said, "Oh my God." He apologized and laughed, and we proceeded to hang out and then go back to my place and have sex. No condom either, right? No self respect. I'm sorry, everybody. Mom and dad, if you're listening, I am sorry. This just shows how codependent I was, how intense of a need I had for him, and how, like Olivia sings, I loved or wanted to love him so bad that I let him treat me like that. I was his willing accomplice. I remember taking Plan B, right? The horror of having to go to the pharmacist right back in like 2009. It was not on the shelves. So you had to go to the store. You had to ask the white older male pharmacist, can I get some Plan B, please? Thank you so much. Oh my God. Yeah. Uh, I I was his willing accomplice. I let him treat me like that. And yeah, that lasted like 2 or 3 times, and then I went on birth control. But look at the extent I went those 2 to 3 times in order to avoid burdening, inconveniencing, and frustrating ex-boyfriend. So we hung out that summer, hooked up, took turns visiting each other, right? We're like an hour, hour and a half apart. And I remember too, maybe on an earlier visit with him, when I went to see him, we, like, very innocent, he was like, "Oh, like, do you want to go get lunch?" And I think there was a Panda Express nearby. And I don't know if I had gotten a ride. I didn't have a car at the time. I didn't even have a license. So I either took the train or went up with friends. And, you know, that was my end of the bargain. I assumed that he would treat me to lunch. We got up to the counter. He was first in the little cafeteria style line. He paid and went and sat down. And I was like, "Oh, and I paid for my meal. I went and sat down, and I I don't I didn't, and I don't think I said one word." So from unprotected sex to meals, I let him treat me the way that he treated me. Yeah, I was willing. I was willing. And, there were sweet moments and adorable texts, and I was falling very hard. And I also was codependent with this intense need for him. Okay, next lyric. The things I did just so I could call you mine. The things you did. In English, the things I did just so I could call you mine, the things you did. As we started to spend more time together late that summer, like July, August, he invited me to my first rave in September. Nocturnal, for those of you ravers. Now, I had never been to a rave. I had not listened to rave music much, nor had I done ecstasy. But, the things I did just so I could call him mine. I went all out and dressed up as Lady Gaga. Okay, back in 2009, she was really into wearing tape on her breasts in the shape of an X, with a mesh leotard, goggles as sunglasses. I think she still does that. And tutus. Okay, so I'm sure there's an image of me somewhere in the untagged universe, because I do not have any pictures from that evening, with X's on my breasts, goggles, tutu, mesh leotard. Right? I got a rave name. I don't know, you get rave names when you go to raves, and my rave name was Tapes. And I did as ravers do. I danced, I received and exchanged colorful beaded bracelets, and I did ecstasy. Okay? The things I did just to call him mine. Right? Like, no drugs. No Lady Gaga outfits, no raves before. I drank, right? We know this very well, but right, there were limits, there were preferences, there were norms, and then what he introduced me to and wanting to appease that need to go to raves, to bring me along. We had a fun group, but his friends were also friends with ex-boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. And so that was awkward. And I was sweet, I was thoughtful, I was helpful, just so I could be the cool new girlfriend, and just so I could call him mine. Okay, so, right, we're racking up the things I did. Unprotected sex, plan B, got on birth control, took trains, paid for my Panda Express, centered my weekends around him. I lost a little weight, and I went all out for my Lady Gaga outfit. And trouble struck at the rave when, like, all of a sudden, ex-boyfriend was on his phone a lot. I was like, yo, why are you on your phone so much when you're here at a rave? I'm wearing black duct tape on my boobs and we should be dancing. And he was like, oh, my ex-girlfriend, I can't, whatever. He's like, my ex-girlfriend was supposed to come here tonight with a guy I think she was involved with, and we've been texting. And I was like, okay. And yeah, I just remember we're at this rave. There's these amazing DJs. People are dancing. And I'm like sitting with my chin on his shoulder. I don't even think I was like trying to read the conversation because it sounded decently innocent because she was bringing in someone. But yeah, I just like rested my chin and not really knowing how to gauge the situation. So eventually he did put his phone away, but that was the beginning of the end, thanks to his ex-girlfriend. But I have an intense need for you, ex-boyfriend, and now you're talking to your ex, right? That pretty girl I've seen in some of your Facebook pictures who's arguably skinnier and prettier than me. Okay, ding, compulsion to repeat, familiarity with a situation, unconscious co-signing to being compared to another girl for affection, attention, and adoration. Okay, and the things I did after that, I have mentioned parts of this in the inner dialogue of a codependent episode. How, we left the rave, we kept hanging out a couple weekends, but then it got to a point in October where he went to go visit and hang out with her with my blessing. I think we agreed not to communicate. It was to let him decide if he wanted to be with me or with her. I fucked up by having sex with someone else that weekend. Yeah, so, he was visiting her too, so we can call it even. And Olivia's lyric, right? The things he did. The things you did. He started talking to his ex-girlfriend. He went to visit his ex-girlfriend. He also didn't talk to me for like 48 hours after I was honest with him about sleeping with the other guy, which was torture for me since I had an intense need for him. And it's like, dude, like you were with your ex-girlfriend. I don't know if they had sex or not. I honestly don't. I guess we didn't talk about it. And continue on this theme of the things he did, the things you did. I can't remember when in the timeline, but he, as an undergrad, had created some controversy at school. It had been documented online, and he was really distressed about it when it came to applying and finding a job. And I actually went to the campus authorities on the matter. I didn't say it was my ex-boyfriend, but I was like, I have a friend who wanted to expunge their affiliation with the controversy. And they were like, no, that's on the record and we can't change that. And I remember I started crying and I was like, but I remember I said she regrets it and doesn't want it to impact her ability to find a job. right? So I went to bat for him when that was his fight. I took time out of my day, went, cried like a baby, and cried afterwards since the campus authority was not kind and I felt really stupid and helpless. So the things I did just to call him mine and the things he did. Oh, the things he did. All right, next lyric. Cross my heart as you crossed the line, and I defended you to all my friends. In English, crossed my heart as you crossed the line, and I defended you to all my friends. What does crossed my heart mean? It's used to emphasize the truthfulness and sincerity of what one is saying. Excuse me. Just excuse the burps, you guys. Okay. Right? So I crossed my heart as he crossed the line. Right? I am yours. I crossed my heart to emphasize my truthfulness and sincerity to him. Once his ex was around, I did what I could just so I could call him mine. And I always felt like I was auditioning for the part of his girlfriend. I was on my best behavior and didn't pick fights, protest, or complain. I remember one night when we went, there were like paths to the beach, like all over this college town. And I remember we went and sat on the stairs, right? We can hear the ocean. It's nighttime, it's quiet. And we would have these talks where we were really honest. And I make a face right now because I'm like, Marissa, I don't think you were being that honest with him. And he was not being that honest with you. But he knew about my binge eating. I knew about his excessive drinking. So we would be honest about our overeating, over drinking, hooking up. And I remember sitting there talking about our feelings or what had been happening. And I said, like, I feel so safe with you. Right? Like, here he is. His phone may have texts from his girlfriend that are actively being sent while we are sitting there. He's obviously choosing me that evening between the two of us, but safe, right? And like knowing how the relationship started with me being taken advantage of, him having shame about that, having unprotected sex, which still went unprotected. It just got better because I was on birth control, but I never asked for a test. We were fortunate that neither of us ever got a STI, but like safe? You feel so safe with him, Marissa? I crossed my heart to him. And with the repetition compulsion, that was familiar. As sad as it is to reflect and admit all of this to you guys and girls and non-binary people, like as a codependent, I had experienced versions of this before where I lied to avoid disappointing others. I had gone to places with my friends that weren't safe in order not to disrupt the flow of our evening. I had stayed quiet in situations that were unfair or unjust with teachers, authorities, family. right? And I had lived in comparison for decades. So apparently, sitting with someone who I'm competing for his love, I'm having to sacrifice my needs for him, and I'm grateful to have his attention on me in that moment. Apparently, that was safe. That was familiar, right? Unconsciously, I was hoping that if I met his needs, wants, and feelings enough and did what I could like master that previous trauma, right? By being chosen for all the sacrifice to be worth it. And if I were chosen, I would be worthy. I would be lovable, despite the messages I received in the past. Right? And this latter part, defending him, my friends, sisters, and parents, from what they knew, which was not a lot, they did not like the sound of our relationship, right? Of me having to wait for him to decide who he wanted to be with. Here I was hanging out with him every weekend, and it got to the point, after the rave and in like October, where I would just start crying during the week when I wasn't with him, realizing he's still talking to both of us. He might choose her. And I am active in this competition, right? And I defended him. I'm like, well, like they just had a really intense relationship and he went through a lot with her, and so they still need to talk, or I don't know, like she keeps reaching out to him and he's just really nice and wants to be considerate and respond to her. I can't remember exactly what I said, but and then two, especially after I slept with that other guy, like I felt like I had no legs to stand on, right? I had ruined my perfection. I had fallen off of the pedestal that he and I had both put me and like anointed me on as the supportive, patient, kind, understanding hookup. And so when I did that, I was like, I mean, he and I are even. And if he's questioning it, of course he's questioning it because look at what I did, right? Mind you, that I likely did that not because of him going to visit his ex-girlfriend. It was a contributing factor, right? We probably would have been hanging out that weekend if he hadn't gone up there. So, not blaming. And also, it's related. It's related. But I defended him. And I defended the controversy he got himself caught up in. I defended him to the people who knew about the controversy. And they were like, oh my God, you're dating that guy? And I was like, uh-huh. He's actually really nice. And yeah, the fact that he didn't know who he wanted to be with and his jerk behavior. He threw a mini tantrum. I was blacked out. I didn't remember that. So, alcohol didn't help. But he bought a mini keg when we went out, lost it. And when we got back to our place, my twin sister was with me at the time. And yeah, he was all upset. And I guess he he like kicked a fence or something. She was like, really? It's a mini keg. And I don't remember it, but you know, I didn't remember it. I was blacked out, sis, whatever. Like he is it for me. And so I will excuse, defend, enable, co-sign, deny his behavior because I have an intense need in relation to him. I had an intense need in relation to him. Right? And my friends were confused, like, Marissa, why are you so guilt-ridden after you slept with that guy when your ex-boyfriend was literally seeing his ex-girlfriend? Right? And I was like, I had sex with someone else. And they were like, and? Right? Intellectually, it makes sense why they were confused, but emotionally, I could not get there. Right? I thought he had the right to be disappointed, hurt, withdraw from me. He needs time to think because of what I've done. Right? And I sense too, like that was a compulsion to repeat too. Right? Feeling like I've disappointed someone since I felt like such a disappointment most of the time. Right? I'm the fraternal, ugly, frumpier twin. Here's my potential, right? What I could be. And then yet here's how I turned out. I'm used to being the disappointment, especially when I'm being compared to someone else. Compulsion to repeat. Familiar. Trying to master it, but just digging myself deeper and deeper into pain, suffering, misery, hurt, heartbreak as a consequence. Okay, so there are 3 more lyrics that I want to analyze. She talks about admitting that like once they ended, she'd do it all again. Olivia, there's a lyric, look what we became. Oh man, like what did we become? I will share with you guys in upcoming episodes. And this last lyric, I hope I was your favorite crime because baby, you were mine. And like, despite you guys will hear the pain, misery, suffering, like I loved it. I loved it. Very similar to what I've discussed in the sacrificial helping syndrome, my codependency at work. There was such joy in the masochistic suffering in that relationship. So I will continue to analyze in a upcoming episode and continue to discuss how we address compulsion to repeat. But for now, I was sharing about this and how I wanted to talk about it with my therapist this week. And he said, do you know how to avoid the compulsion to repeat? Yes, therapist, I do. Right? Once you become conscious, even semi-conscious of what you are doing, you disengage. Okay, like I was not conscious of what I was doing. I was not conscious of how familiar it was for me to be in competition for the love of another. I was not conscious that I was putting myself in situations where I would disappoint him because I felt like I was a disappointment for everyone. Right? So I will share more how with him I set up boundaries. I saw myself at a fork in the road where I really could have chosen myself I could have chosen to disengage from the repetition, compulsion, or I could have chosen him, and I chose him. The healing comes when we see the fork and we choose ourselves. So getting conscious or semi-conscious is the goal. We could just keep repeating the trauma over and over and over, but that doesn't tend to work out so well, right? It's when we become conscious of the pattern, recognize it for what it is, unresolved trauma from our past, and we let it go. No, right? So it's to say, like, no, ex-boyfriend, I don't deserve to be in competition. I don't deserve to be compared. And I don't deserve to be in this chronic audition to play the part of your girlfriend while someone else is vying for the same part. It's familiar, but I don't want it to be anymore. Right? And I think too, the healing comes when we realize that what we concluded in our past, right? From my perspective, right? Some people did tell me directly, other people indirectly, and I also really took what I thought people said and I ran with it. I ran with being unlovable. I ran with being uglier, fatter, less athletic, less worthy in comparison to my sister, but it isn't actually true. Right? So when we realize what we concluded in the past was wrong, then we don't have to keep trying to prove it wrong, since we have proven to ourselves it's not right. Right? Then I don't have to be in a relationship where I am in competition with someone else to prove I am lovable, because I already realized, like, oh, I concluded because of these series of events that I was unlovable. Like, that's not true. That is not true. And at the whiff of someone or something communicating to me I'm unlovable, I will disengage. That is the growth. That is letting go of the compulsion to repeat. Like any other compulsion, right? You look at what's underneath it. What is driving this? You challenge that and you remove the need to repeat it. I'll do other parts of the song and the relationship upcoming weeks from now. Since, despite it only being 14 months, it was oh so codependent. Okay, so give the song a listen. Let me know what you think. Please send your feelings and response to Marissa at codependummy.com. And episode 28, that's a wrap. This is Marissa Escobar, your hostess mostest. And remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Thank you for listening. You're still here? Just kidding. Girl, this is not therapy and I'm not your therapist, okay? This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the publisher, or the guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional information. If you want or need a professional, you should find one.